So my name is Andrew Gerasimov. I'm VP of Customer Success, responsible for smiling and happy customers that Spryker has in North American market. And I would like to introduce you to Praveen Yalavarti, Chief Technology Officer of SDverse. Praveen has over 25 years of experience. He used to be an executive leader at Ford Motor Company, and he is on board for one of the AI startups in the United States. So I'm pretty sure that you may want to connect with Anthony, who had a wonderful presentation right before you, and you will have a lot to discuss.
Yep.
So, Praveen, tell us a little bit more about SDverse. What significant shifts do you see in the industry? Why is it important? How did you discover the opportunity?
Well, thanks for the question. I think to make this a little more interesting, I'll probably take the audience in time back, probably about 50, 60 years when the automotives were found. Typically, it's a device, if you consider the definition of an automobile, it's something that can get you from point A to point B. That's how the evolution has started. But over time, as the vehicle gets matured, there are lots of electronic components that were added, starting from radio to cassette player, to DVD players, to automotive systems that enhance your driving experience, which is contributing to a lot of software in the cars. So much so that there is so much software in a vehicle today that you can't imagine. I'll have some numbers in the next slides. But over the years, a lot of software has been proliferated into the vehicles, and they are specifically targeting a specific function. They're getting electronic modules embedded in various parts of the vehicle. When then connectivity hit, right? We've now started making these cars connected, just like the IoT revolution has taken over in the last 15 years. What that did is it actually did provide a lot of convenience for the customers, whether I can start my car remotely, to all the way to I can update my car just like how my phone gets updated, through software updates. As a result of the connectivity, the car needs to mature over time. And because of the history, there are several pockets of software and electronic components hardly tied together. And each one of the components that are going into the car, let's say an infotainment system or an ADAS system, they have their own supply chain. But when this all comes together, it has become really complex because most of the software is interdependent. You can imagine the powertrain is dependent on ADAS, or ADAS is dependent on powertrain, the steering control systems, and so on. So auto industry then looked at, okay, how do we mitigate this complexity? We have so many modules. There are almost like 70 to 80 electronic modules in a vehicle, if you look at it. And now if I want to update one feature, and that is spread across 5 modules, and I have to update all 5 modules. It's not as simple as getting a software update on your phone when you're updating the car, a software update on the car. So that led to the revolution in the last 4 years is what the industry is calling as software-defined vehicles. Very similar to what the mobile industry has undergone when, some of you may have used these flip phones, the BlackBerries, eventually they all died. Now you only have iPhone and Android. They are driven, the reason is that it's a software-defined device, in this case, a mobile device, where the software is defining what the operating system, what the hardware should be. In other words, when Android came in, they don't even have a hardware. Android pushed, if you want to get an Android operating system on your device, thou shall follow this hardware, right? It's the opposite of how the automotives have been working so far. It's the hardware defining the features rather than the software defining the features. So the industry quickly realized that the only way to scale is to build vehicles differently than what we have been building for the last 100 years. That is, instead of hardware-defined, make them software-defined. And that's the concept of software-defined vehicles. SDverse combines software-defined vehicle universe. That's the phrase that's coming together. And this concept, now to build the software-defined vehicles, a lot of the suppliers that have been producing these components that are actually going to the cars have started realizing, how do I be part of that? From an automotive standpoint, I need to make my car simpler because I need to maintain this car, with updates later on and so forth. So automotives are driving towards hardware consolidation because I don't want 70 modules hanging around in the car. I want to centralize them, so there is hardware consolidation happening. And as a result, each one of these hardwares are provided by multiple tier ones and tier twos. They're like, what do I do now? I mean, they don't want hardware anymore. So that's the push for, okay, I will take your software as long as you can decouple your software and sell me that software. I don't want your hardware anymore. This is the OEM play. So there is a lot of churn in the last 3-4 years. And one OEM that realized, yes, and most of the automotives then say, okay, if you're not going to give me that software, I'm going to build it myself. So there is a lot of insourcing of software that's happening. And the tier ones are like scratching their heads, what do I do now? So this resulted in a lot of software insourcing by the OEMs, but at the same time, OEMs don't have enough capacity to build all the software that have been built by 70 different companies all by themselves. Literally, there's no capacity. So they have to be able to leverage, and that's one company that actually started doing this is General Motors. Okay, we need to leverage our strengths with our suppliers. How do I build something that can build some collaboration? Because all of these component manufacturers are in silos. ADAS team is only working with 1 or 2 suppliers, infotainment 1 or 2 suppliers, but now when we consolidated the hardware, they all have to work together in that same environment. So there needs to be collaboration, and these are disparate work streams that are like not connected before. So General Motors thought that, okay, we need to, as an industry leader, we need to build an ecosystem where people can, companies can collaborate. And they went to Roland-Berger. Roland-Berger is obviously a European-based management consulting company, and looked for strategies of how to launch something where software in the vehicle can be collaborated, and buyers in the sense that automotives on one side as becoming the buyers, the tier ones and tier twos becoming on the seller side. How do we build that? And that's how the SDverse story has begun. So it's a long-winded answer, but that sets the context for why it's important.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Praveen. It sounds pretty sophisticated, and that's exactly where Spryker shines, as you know.
Yeah.
So very good. So let me maybe set the stage now when we know a little bit about SDverse. And key learnings that we're going to have today is how to develop a marketplace strategy, how to gain a deeper understanding of different marketplace models, and how to explore principles and strategies discussed today and apply them beyond the automotive industry. So what is the value proposition? Why do you think SDverse is important, and are there any other marketplaces like that?
So SDverse is a unique, one-of-its-kind marketplace in the automotive software. We are purely focused on exchanging software between, it's a business-to-business marketplace, so there is no similar marketplace elsewhere. We don't have a competitor at the moment. But what it does do is consolidates, when you look at automotive industry, it's a very small space in terms of the number of companies operating in that space. So we're trying to get everybody under the same umbrella, so they have opportunities. For example, automotives typically work with only tier ones, and the tier ones has to work tier twos. It's like the monolithic culture of how has been formed for the last 100 years. The concept of marketplace is actually trying to break those barriers, where we can provide opportunity for a tier 2 or even a startup to have a direct interface with an OEM. If their software is good enough, we're providing that opportunity for anyone to contribute and collaborate.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So when we were on the main stage earlier today, Alex Graf was talking about matchmaking, and I know that this is pretty much one of the key principles for SDverse as well.
Yep.
Why is it important?
So, like I said, if you look at the history, and I explained, that's why I said the context, automotives typically deal with a specific supply base, and it's important for us to do matchmaking because the transactions there's key differences that I'll come to in a moment. In the SDverse marketplace, there is no commerce, in the sense that the commerce is outside of the platform. Like, one might wonder, why are we calling it a marketplace? If you think about a software being produced by a tier 1 or a tier 2, or even a startup, and let's say an OEM is interested in buying that, they're looking at the transaction is not like $100 or $1,000, right? Let's say the software costs $100. For example, Ford manufactures 5 million vehicles a year, so that's $500 million, right? So it's literally not possible to add like a commerce as a key platform capability. Rather, building relationships because now they were never interacted with an OEM before. Now we are building those partnerships, and matchmaking is so important so that they can offer, like for example, in the case of a particular seller, the seller should have the flexibility to offer a different pricing. Let's say if it is a mass volume, a big company taking or buying from a tier one, they can go and sell it to a smaller vendor. Maybe the volume is not that high. They should have the flexibility to add or decrease the price based on the volume discounts. So for those reasons, the commerce is off the table. But what we do really do is making them connect with each other, and several features through the platform that we've enabled that they can immediately get in touch with a seller and have those longer-term relationships. And that's why matchmaking is so important for SDRs.
Got it. Thank you, Praveen. So Anthony started the topic on the AI, right? And I know that you're on the board of one of the startups in the US as well.
Yeah.
So I know that it has really prominent future for SDRs specifically.
Yep.
Why don't you tell us what do you mean by that, right? And why is it important for SDRs?
Yeah, so very good question. So as I explained how the software complexities in the vehicles, the other thing that's even more very different from a typical marketplace where we all go to is if you're trying to go and get onto an Amazon, I'm trying to look for an Android phone, or I'm trying to look for a Samsung whatever TV. So there is a predefined term that every one of us know: a TV is a TV, a phone is a phone. In our marketplace that we are trying to build for exchanging software, there is no specific name. Each vendor there has their own specific name for that. The only way to discover that they have a product that is of use to me by a buyer, let's say I'm Ford Motor Company, I'm General Motors, I'm interested in learning about the product, the only way I can get that knowledge is by asking, hey, do you have this capability? I'm looking for a software that can stream video from interior cameras of a vehicle to the cloud so I can create an experience on my mobile device, right? So that they can see what's happening in the vehicle, as an example. So literally asking for a capability or literally defining a use case to know if a particular product is even capable of that. Lack of a specific term for a particular product. So AI becomes very, very important because the keyword searches can only get us so long, because the types of questions the customers could ask, the same capability can be referred in different ways. And that's where I think the power of AI will come into play.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to maybe switch gears a little bit and talk about your implementation of Spryker. I know that you started the project around April or May, and you are already going live in just a couple of weeks from now. So it's really just a few months of development, which is really impressive. And this is, again, where Spryker really strives, right? But why don't you tell us a little bit more about your experience?
Yeah, so it's a great experience so far with Spryker. I've come on board only in May. This is my 4th month at this company. But we have significant number of changes or modifications or customizations we have to do. I'll touch on a few that, typically a marketplace, you have lots of buyers and very few sellers. And the marketplace we're building is the exact opposite. There are very few buyers. You can count on fingers, like how many big automotives are there, right? The Fords, GM, Volkswagen, blah, 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 like maybe a handful. But we have lots of sellers. There are tier ones, tier twos, and startups. So it's different from that point of view. The other thing is I already explained that we're not doing commerce. Then we also have provided the flexibility, or wanted the flexibility in the platform to have a company joining can be both buyer and a seller. Very unique from any different market, from any other marketplace. So these are all the different customizations we needed to be successful, to be able to launch. And obviously Spryker, with its very modular framework and modular architecture, we were able to do a lot of this customization, and we're almost ready for launch end of this month.
Perfect. Sounds good. Maybe to double down on this a little bit, yesterday during some of our roundtable discussions, we were talking about your feedback that you were getting constantly before you even went live, which I thought is really, really impressive.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing some of this experience? What's your process, and how can other Spryker customers implement it?
So it's a very different, unique experience. When I started figuring out what this platform should be and what kind of customizations are needed, I had a very unique and a good problem to have. Like, I have more customers that are waiting for this platform to launch than a typical platform where you build and expect the customer to join. So it's a good place to be, but it also presents a different level of challenge, because different levels of expectations, maintaining those expectations from coming from various sellers, various buyers. What I've done is we have an alternate week, an hour of workshop where lots of ideas can be flown. And at the end of the workshop, we all vote on, everybody votes on what's our best idea. So it's getting the direct input from the entire suite of customers is really helped me shape the platform that we are about to launch on September 30th, so about 2 weeks from now.
Thank you, Praveen. So the more I learn about SDverse, the more I see similarities with Spryker. It sounds like you are a very ecosystem-driven, very customer-centric, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So way I explained the software-defined automobile industry, it's an ecosystem-driven platform that we are building because we want to cater to the sellers, buyers, automotive suppliers, and everybody else. From that perspective, it is an ecosystem-driven. But once the match is made on the platform, this buyer wants to buy the seller, then it becomes very customer-focused because now they have a very customized experience once they start getting into that matchmaking. So I think when you use the platform, you'll get a lot more of those details, how that customization is made when the deal is made. And that's where it becomes more customer-centric. So it's both ecosystem-driven when it comes to the entire buyer and the seller ecosystem. But when the matchmaking happens, that's when most of the customer orientation comes in.
Okay, that makes sense. And we have many other customers here today, not necessarily from the automotive space like you are, right? But what do you think they can learn from your experience and from SDverse generally?
I think there's one fundamental learning that I have found, which is actually the third bullet here. What we are trying to do is changing the culture of an entire industry that's almost 100 years old. To be able to bring them to the table and collaborate has been a big challenge. The only way to break those barriers is to leverage collaboration aspects. And there are several things that I talked about even yesterday in one of the sessions back there. I've used some interesting techniques to bring people together, even though they disagree on several things, but they agree on a lot of other things. So you have to find those common grounds and to be able to break those barriers. So that's one of my key learnings. And then the other key thing that I have explained now is we have predominantly pushed matchmaking as our strategy rather than adding commercials or putting price points out there. Because this is not a typical marketplace where a customer comes and buys one item and leaves. This is a longer-term relationship building. And that's why matchmaking is something that we have prioritized, because we want them to be working with each other on a longer term, not for a particular transaction. And then last but not the least, flexibility of the platform is so important in our case. We've done so much customization with Spryker. I don't know if we would have been able to do that in such a short span, like probably less than 4 months, with such a significant customization. I think it's only possible with the flexibility of the platform that Spryker has offered. So I'm so glad that we were able to pull this off.
Thank you. Glad to hear that, Praveen. Maybe the last question I'll ask you today is, we keep saying about the upcoming launch, which is happening in just a couple of weeks from now. Can you tell us a little bit more what to expect and what kind of launch event you're planning over there in Detroit?
Yeah, so the launch, as I said, in 2 weeks, on September 30th, it is in Detroit happening. The launch event is happening in 30th. We would have loaded up our marketplace by number of software products by then. Actually, that is happening right now as we speak. We are assembling a lot of executives from various companies. You can look at SDverse.auto. They're pretty big companies that are part of the partner ecosystem, as well as we're bringing some local leaders like the governors and the city mayor and so on to build that awareness that we are building a tech company. That's most of what that is. And it's also getting live streamed on LinkedIn when the event goes live.
Nice, nice. Obviously, it's a big deal. So thank you. Thank you. I know that with 2 weeks right before the launch, you probably have a lot of other things to do, but we truly appreciate your support, Praveen. Thank you for being here, and thank you for flying all the way from Detroit.
Yep.